So we have Alistair Schroff, who's a founding member of Lakes Animal Friendship Society, and Jennifer Piggin, a visual artist and educator in Lheidli T'enneh in Prince George, British Columbia, and I apologize if I mispronounced anything. This is going to be a presentation called In Their Own Words, Collaborating to Deliver Culturally Relevant Animal Welfare Materials. And Alistair is the founding member of Lakes Animal Friendship Society. They have been tremendous supporters of the CommuniCast podcast. I'm very thankful of their involvement with us. They are past presenters. They are out of Northern British Columbia, Canada. LAFS focuses on humane education to improve the happiness and health of animals, families, and communities. Alistair and his wife, Valerie Ingram, have written and published dozens of educational resources which have been distributed worldwide. The Lheidli T'enneh Dakelh translation project is the second Aboriginal language project that they have undertaken. The first collaboration with Jennifer in the SD number 57 Aboriginal education team. Jennifer is currently employed as a district vice principal of language and culture within school district number 57 Indigenous education. She is a volunteer and founding board member of both the Amaneka Artist Run Center Society, otherwise known as Amaneka Arts Center, and the Northern Indigenous Artists Council. Jennifer is inspired to work within her community and within the Castan drummers with a passion for language, culture, and community connectivity. Her artwork is often collaborative in nature, using a wide range of media, including painting, drawing, carving, digital design, mosaic, traditional arts, public installations, logo and tattoo design, and much more. Again, my apologies if I mispronounced anything. Welcome, Alistair and Jennifer.
This, for the record, this is the first time I've spoken to and with Jennifer, so you must appreciate modern technology, that's for sure. But I will let Jennifer go ahead.
Howdy, Jennifer Piggin Sahatni. I'm a member of Lheidli T'enneh with Wet'suwet'en French and Italian ancestry. I've been an educator for almost 16 years now, and have worked within School District 57 for all of that time as a teacher, mostly an art teacher, but then recently in the last 4 years have been the district vice principal for language and culture. I am sitting here on the unceded ancestral territory of the Lheidli T'enneh, of whom which I belong to, but also am a settler at the same time because of my mixed ancestry of being French and Italian, but also the fact that my parents and my grandparents, my mother, at least on her side, came from Whitsett, BC, and near Smithers, with the canyon there, and I try and stay in touch with most of my family as much as I can, but I was born and raised in Prince George. I have a strong connection with the community here and the lands here and the domesticated but also non-domesticated animals, and I just absolutely love the weather that's happening right now, so I just have to add that. It's amazing. Yeah, I guess I'll pass it off on to Alistair.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. And yeah, it was you'll hear more about the project, but when I was collecting Jennifer's profile, I was so impressed with all the great things she does, and yeah, so it was yeah, pretty impressive. But I'm actually speaking to you from the territory of a number of Coast Salish people right now. I'm down on the coast of BC, but I actually come from where I consider still feels like home, which is the Burns Lake area of British Columbia. So we're on the west side of the continent and north of the border in the central part of BC, and that red star you see on the left. And so where Lakes Animal Friendship Society works and operates is generally around the Burns Lake area, which is the star on the left-hand side, on the west side of the map on the right. And then you can see the star for the Prince George area, which is sort of a main hub. And the school district that we work with is directly adjacent to the school district Jennifer works for. A little bit of background on Lakes Animal Friendship Society. Some of you may have heard our prior presentation, so my intent wasn't to go into things in great detail and allow more time for we'll hear what Jennifer has to say and do a little bit more discussion specific to the project, but it's still useful to have a little bit of background of how we got here. So Lakes Animal Friendship Society operates 4 main programs, and those are student and community education, spay-neuter assistance for low-income families, pet food and outdoor shelters for low-income families, and we focus on those things to the largest extent. So we always consider education to be our #1 priority, and really that's how we got started. So many years ago, I say so many years ago, it's be 14 years ago now. And we started with education because even before LAFS was an entity, my wife Valerie, who worked for school district number 91, was a teacher, and she left the teaching for the district to become a full-time volunteer to follow her passion to work with kids and improve animal care, levels of compassion and safety, particularly with dogs. And something that she emphasized when she was a in-classroom teacher and to even more greater extent as a volunteer is hands-on as much as possible with a lot of storytelling and sharing, giving consistent messages always in how everything is presented, and helping children to develop solutions to things that they see in their community that they would like to improve around animal care, and empowering them by helping give tools for implementing what they're learning in the classroom. So say, for example, if we're talking about spaying and neutering and the importance, having access for their families to more easily access spay-neuter services for their animals. So providing the avenue to actually implement what they're learning, as opposed to being frustrated by not being able to do what they're learning. And we do have a community cat background. Happy Feral Cat Day, everyone. And of course, that's how we initially made our contact with Stacy, whom we love and adore. So we had a lot of colonies around Burns Lake, and between 15 and 100 cats. And they were in known problem areas, and sometimes they were in areas we didn't know about. But that's the great thing about talking to kids about things. They're always love to share, and so that's how we learned about some of these colonies, and we set out to tackle them. And yeah, so as we always, in the topic of empowerment, instead of saying somebody should do something about that, we encourage certainly the kids, and we take that on ourselves, is to be that somebody who is taking action. And involving the kids to the extent possible has always been something we've appreciated. The first community cat colony we started taking care of, the Firehall colony at South Bank, BC. Those 2 little girls on the left were the ones that brought it to our attention and were involved in the care of the colony. They also brought awareness of it to their school, and they actually put up posters around the school with pictures of the cats whom they named. And what you're seeing the kids reading is they're reading stories about examples where they were a superhero to the critters in their lives and took an active role in helping them. And Morgan and her friend on the right hand side raised birthday money toward the cats. They had penny jars, and so yeah, it was nice to have the students involved. And that's what kind of gave us the first kick into developing unique materials for animal welfare education. And we really wanted to take that community cat project and do something with it, and also involve the students at the same time. So we had in our newsletters and in our handouts to the kids, we asked them to help us finish the story. We had a draft outline of the story we had written, and we wanted them to contribute artwork for the intros and end pages of the book. And we wanted to make it their story, and our first sort of awareness that we needed to create something that more reflected the community in which we work. So rural, northern, and with First Nations characters, which we didn't see a lot of in the animal welfare materials we used in our programs. And that's how we developed Nobody's Cats. And those are some of the pictures that made their way into the book, which is you see here, and many of you probably have. And if you don't have a copy, you'll get an opportunity later to get yourself a copy. And subsequent to Nobody's Cats, we developed another book, Out of the Cold, and also another book, How I Love and Care for My Happy Dog, How I Love and Care for My Happy Cat, a flip book, as well as some coloring books. And we had a friend who was a vet in Portugal, and she had an interest in the materials, but she said, I would love to be able to present it to our community in Portuguese. And so she offered to do the translation, and with her, she worked for a large spay-neuter group in Portugal. And so she and a local translator, a linguistic expert in Portuguese, they're both native Portuguese speakers, took it on, and that's how we ended up with the Portuguese version. And so another fellow we worked with from Germany did the same. And so that was sort of our exposure. Say we have the materials, now how can we sort of extend the reach, adapt them to other communities? That's externally, but also, of course, in North America, we have Spanish and French as dominant languages, French being an official language of Canada, and of course Spanish widely used in the US. And so that they were both on our list as well. But we were kind of missing something quite obvious, and that was Aboriginal materials. We live and work in Aboriginal communities, and so a language that is important to our local community, we were totally we were missing the boat at that point. And so that's how we knew we wanted to undertake something that was a little more meaningful. And at this point, we'll kick off our poll if Kristen or Stacy is ready to run the questions for us there.
Does your organization offer materials to the community in other local languages besides English? Yes or no? All right, I share the results. So we have 75% say no, 25% say yes.
Interesting. So that's still a pretty good percentage. How about the next one?
Have you translated, or do you have ambitions to translate materials to Indigenous languages? We have 9% yes, 91% no.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's great. So good for you. For hopefully you have versions underway, and if you don't, well, hopefully we can help you as you kick those off. So thank you for the great feedback. And we were fortunate to have in our community of Burns Lake, the Lake Babine Nation has a very fluent carrier language speaker for the local dialect, who actually has written a number of dictionaries and materials. Her name is Susie Tress, and she translated a couple of our key materials, which is these coloring books, Our Family, and then she also did Happy Dog, Happy Cat. And Susie did a lovely job of this project. But when we went to print materials for a very large distribution here last fall, and I was looking around, and I found that there was a carrier language school in Prince George, which is not far from our community. So I reached out to the principal at the carrier language program in the Aboriginal education program, and she got to me quite quickly and said, "No, we love the materials. I'll pass them on to a person who knows exactly what to do with them." Of course, that person is Jennifer, and because I wanted to ask them, if we can get more printed, would you like them for the Prince George community for some of the and for their programs? And the polite response back was, "No, we love these materials, but the dialect isn't quite right. So what can we do about that?" And so that's how we got into the translation project with Jennifer, at which point I am going to kick it over to her to talk about why she was excited about the project and how it all went down.
Awesome, thanks. We do in the education system have a lot of strong motivations to incorporate the local languages. So there's a few guiding documents that really kind of direct from the government important pieces for us. So like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People that outlines the importance of and the support that the government's supposed to provide for developing and promoting and encouraging and supporting Indigenous peoples to develop their languages and have them in the education system. It's a right for Indigenous people to have that within the education system, but there's a huge struggle in regards to how many people actually speak the languages fluently, knowing these languages are primarily oral languages and have been obviously stripped from communities through the residential schools, as well as just from colonization, the impacts of colonization when there's, you know, an influx of people speaking another language. So English, I speak English primarily. I'm learning Dakelh. Since I was a kid, I didn't have it around me. Part of that 60s Scoop piece that is, you know, a common story. There's a high percentage of Indigenous youth in care that are not exposed to their culture and their language. So the only aspects, the only way to reach our students and our future generations with the language is to bring it into the schools and bring it into the communities. And one of the biggest things for educators in our district and many others and many other organizations and places is that there's no resources. So it was really exciting to see a resource that had been translated into the Lake Babine dialect of Dakelh, or Carrier, also known as Carrier. And when I saw it, it was exciting for me because I mentioned my mom was from Witset, so it's a very similar dialect to my mother tongue, I guess I could call it. But I live, work, and play and support the community here where I live in Prince George, also known as Lheidli T'enneh. So when I got the opportunity to help support this, I was lucky enough to grow up with some of the people that hold the language in their knowledge. There's a lot of elders that don't necessarily speak the language, but they understand it. It's part of those impacts of the residential schools. They're called silent speakers. So they understand it when they hear it, but they'll respond back in English. It's just conditioned trauma. So I'm lucky enough to have two educators that both speak. They're both elderly. They're the last, well, I guess there's last three language holders. So you can see two of them there. There's Edie on the right side with the glasses on and her mother, Josie. And so I've been really blessed with the opportunity to work with them in a lot of projects through the school district, but also through the Lakes Animal Friendship Society on this project. We initially set out to translate 2 stories for kids that came along with the coloring books, which are super amazing to have in our possession now. And we've distributed them throughout our school district. So we in our school district have Indigenous education workers working in every single school, as well as we have some itinerant staff. So they work out of our office, including some teachers, early learning teachers, middle years teachers, and high school teachers. And so these resources are super important because they are able to be like, we package them up into class, like not full class sets, but sets of 6 so that our Indigenous education workers can have them in their room. The whole process of translating it is a long process. We, like I mentioned, set out to translate 2 of the books, but ended up just doing the 1. And it's difficult because translating some of our English language, there's no way to translate it into another language. For example, goodbye, there's no word for goodbye in our language. We say Nanyu Stensi, means I'll see you again. There are certain concepts like please and thank you that are not translatable. We come up with other phrases and sentiments to put in those place. Even the thank you that we use, merci, is a derivative of a French word, merci. In our language, there was no R, no P, no Q. I think there was no Y. There's certain letters, but there's other sounds and letters that come up. So I think our next steps in this process will be to do a recording of our elders speaking the language, telling the stories in Dakelh. And so the teachers will have that resource to read alongside with the kids. I mean, it was just so exciting to see the looks on our Indigenous education workers' faces when they got these beautiful resources. Something cool about the culture, because there's cultural components to it as well. When we talk about animals, some of them, like there's generic terms to use for animals, but when it comes to the dogs specifically, they're considered family to us. So when we talk about people, we count people a certain way. We count dogs the same way as we count people because they're considered part of the family, whereas cats are not. So the translations may be slightly different from one side to the other side, because this is the happy cat, there's the happy dog side as well. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I know you saw from the looks on Josie and Edie's faces how happy they were to do the work that they do. The process for me was to, of course, reach out to our nation, find out who, like prior to this, who knows the languages, start to build those relationships with them, spend time with them. And you saw that picture was at their home, so I would go to their house to work on these. And they live on reserve, and that kind of helped them not have to worry about the taxes on the honoraria, because it really impacts them as people who are living on pensions. So there's a lot of factors in that to consider, how it impacts them in the long run. Gift cards are always appreciated if you're thinking about doing a project like this, because they could use that to go get their groceries and their gas and that type of stuff, and doesn't necessarily have to show up on their taxes. And just gifts, recommendations for thank yous is gifts coming from the land, anything you may harvest. So right now is a good time to harvest rose hips. So collecting those, letting them dry, you know, jarring them and giving them as a gift. So we paid our elders an honoraria and went through numerous revisions, because sometimes, you know, with different languages, when it's being typed up, things don't get caught. There's, you know, maybe missing glottal, which is like the apostrophe that's in the language there. And then really problem solving some of those words, like the veterinarian there, right? T'enneh is life. Yobadayan is the person. It's speaking of a person who takes care of like the life of the animals. So it's like a doctor as well. So some of those things take a little longer, a lot of back and forth, and then consultation with other elders and kind of how you translate things. You can say things in numerous ways, so it does take a little bit of time investment. And in regards to funding, I know we were lucky enough to have the grant and have the Lakes Animal Friendship Society on board, and we cost shared with our department, because we were making this resource and it was just for the printing costs, but we did cover the honoraria. And there's also tons of grants and stuff. So you could always approach a community to ask them if they're interested in co-developing something, and they can apply as an Indigenous organization for a lot more funding. They'll have a lot more access to that. So as long as you have the people willing to spend the time and do the work, it's a great opportunity. And for me, it was really important, because as we were doing these translations, I'm learning more, I'm hearing the language more, I'm seeing it more, we're problem solving how to say new things. And so I really enjoyed that work, and I enjoy building the relationships and the fun that we have at times, laughing about some translations, because it can be really humorous to think of how things are translated. And then, of course, if I mispronounce something, what I'm actually saying might not be what is supposed to be said, and so those interesting translations can happen as well. But if you're looking to provide like a rationale for the reason why you would do something like this, I had mentioned the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People that Canada has signed on to. There's also the 94 calls to action that also have some things that address language and culture. Other books and things that I've participated in translating have been with master's students, and just even having the words, doing it in English and pulling words from resources like the online dictionaries and stuff, and just integrating some of the language a little bit here and there. Then it gets people talking about it and thinking about things in different ways. It can really give kids a sense of pride and seeing a language, and it can be a lot of fun too to explore different languages, because some people just have those brains that latch on right away, and you know, some people, it might take forever for them to learn a few words, but that's okay. It's really honoring the people of the territory and advancing the languages that are nearly, you know, dying. There's a lot of languages that are, as we say, sleeping and need to be revitalized or woken up. And so this is really exciting to see, and hopefully carries on. A little bit about Dakelh while I'm on the topic of the languages is there's a lot of different languages in Canada. Dakelh is part of the T'enneh language group. It's like a family tree. So the T'enneh language or Athabascan language has a lot of different languages within it, within that family. And then Dakelh or carrier has numerous dialects. So our neighbors, 100 kilometers away in Vanderhoof, for example, they'll have a very similar language, but some things might change, like a vowel, or they might have a different name for certain things because of that distance apart. So it is good to be very aware that there are dialects within each language. So you can't just assume because you're talking about, as you guys saw, the carrier language or the Lake Babine Nation's language is quite a bit different than the Lheidli T'enneh dialect of the language. And it's really neat to kind of do comparisons of those dialects as well. But yeah, I think even within Lheidli T'enneh, there are sub-dialects. So influences from neighbors to the south of us, and some families have influences from neighbors to the west. So even within a dialect, there could be sub-dialects. So that can be a tricky thing to navigate when doing resources like this, because even within a community, sometimes people do not agree, and it takes a little bit of finessing and having the right people. So I also consulted with a linguist who's worked with both of the elders all three of the elders that we have left, as well as many others in other dialects. And so the linguist was kind of the person that helped us through some of those difficult conversations around which dialect is the proper dialect. And so we usually come to a fairly reasonable consensus with that assistance. So there are some hurdles to cover, but there's a lot of benefit to it all, and really excited to have been a part of this and to get to spend the time with our elders and hear their stories and have some fun with them as we worked on the translations. Yeah, that's all for me.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was awesome. And don't turn off your mic quite yet. Like from really good clarifications on the different dialects and just how broad, even though it's one linguistic group, how many little nuances there are. And in our community of Burns Lake, so it's like the area that we serve and work in is I would say relatively compact in that it's only perhaps 40 or for our American friends 40 or 50 miles in any direction. The communities generally where we work in, we have a couple outliers that are perhaps maybe 70 miles away. But can you give us a little bit of context, Jennifer, about the school district 57, sort of some extreme examples of the communities you're trying to serve and how you're getting these resources to really quite some remote areas?
Yeah, sure. So School District 57 is a large area. I know School District 91 in Vanderhoof encompasses a lot of different nations. I think they have about 13 different nations that they service. Here in Prince George, I mean, we service a lot of nations, but in regards to territory, Lheidli T'enneh runs all the way from Mackenzie to the Alberta border, including McBride and Valemont, as well as heading south towards Quesnel, but not all the way. And so it's a large territory. And within that territory, we have the McLeod Lake Indian Band. So they speak a different language. It's Sekani. But yeah, so kind of when I was talking about the dialects and the influences from those areas, when our population decline happened due to, the various pandemics and all the impacts of colonization there, down from thousands down to about, I think it was about 50 members. So that's why a lot of the language was lost. And so now we are trying to bring that all back together. And so when we have Prince George being such a large area, it's an epicenter. For those of you who aren't from the north, it's like the northern capital, I call it. So we have about 80,000 people living in Prince George. A good population of our students, 30% are Indigenous, but that is also including Indigenous people from other areas. So there's lots of Dakelh people from other communities coming in that were born and raised here, especially coming from the Saikas, Nadli, Nakazli, Skalatin, Burns Lake, lots of Wet'suwet'en. So we have a very diverse population of students that would benefit from, of course, learning the local dialect, which is what we like to ensure that we are supporting on this territory, but other resources. So those other resources that were sent out that are from Lake Babine are also useful for those students to really feel that connection and pride in their communities too. Of course, there's Métis and there's Inuit and there's Cree and there's tons of other Indigenous people, but just having that discussion and them understanding and being able to read what's happening. It's kind of a movement that's been happening in our community where the signages in our schools are popping up into like they've got us to translate all the rooms, and computer room and things like that are a little bit difficult, but also doable. And the resources are starting to build, like this resource, our online resources, other books, lesson plans and things like that, sound files, PowerPoints, tons of stuff are building up. So it's nice to do that, and grateful for this opportunity with you guys to build onto that body of resources that we have. And of course, these were, I know there was a small run of these, but if people in other communities wanted to purchase them, they could probably reach out, and we may have a few extras kicking around as samples as well for people to use as a template or an idea. Or if they have students that are from, you know, any of the Dakelh territories, they'll be able to understand it. They're, like I mentioned, the dialects might be different, but as the elders and people know the words, they'd be like, oh, I know what that says, right? Even though it's not exactly the same. It's kind of like the dialects in English, where if we went over to, let's say, Eastern Canada with the people from PEI, they have a bit of a dialect or an accent that, you know, people talk faster or slower or may say things a little bit different, tomato type thing. So yeah, it's a great resource if you have anybody who's got Dakelh or carrier ancestry and interested in learning the language.
Yeah, and further to that, Jennifer, part of it, and we provided, so we partnered on the printing as part of our it was an informal partnership agreement, but it worked really well. We always like to do business on the handshake anyways, so that's perfect. But so we teamed up in this case to have a longer print run to have more copies for distribution. So that worked really well. But in light of technological advances and also uncertainties around things like COVID, we produced the electronic slides as well that they could use on smart boards or whatever in the remote classrooms. And also then the classroom visitors don't have to necessarily have hard copies of the book. They can just have a digital file. So similarly, if anybody would like the set of slides for the book, we'll happily share them as well with Jennifer's permission. So that's there. So yeah, so how about some trivia to break things up a little bit? So this, well, I guess, sorry, just out of curiosity, this is not the trivia question, but anybody know who the veterinarian on the right is?
I do.
Sorry, I don't know if I can see all the comments, but Stacy,
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah, so we have Dr. Jeff.
That is indeed Dr. Jeff. Yeah, so Dr. Jeff visited our little tiny town before he was Dr. Jeff. I mean, he's always been Dr. Jeff Rocky Mountain Vet, but before he even had a TV show, he came to Burns Lake for our community animal care event in 2013. And what an amazing guy. But anyways, how we made it, well, of course we would have put him in our book anyways, but we partnered on the Spanish version and with Planned Parenthood International, which is Jeff's charitable arm. So we produced Spanish language materials, this book being one of them, and so we couldn't have the book without Jeff in it. So there he is. Anyways, there's your non-trivia trivia question. So here is the real trivia question. Take it away, Jennifer.
All right, yeah. So maybe in the chat, if you're able to throw out a guess, or maybe you know how many Indigenous languages are in Canada. And I can give you the answer in a moment, but I'll let you.
We'll take the closest, but we'll let you put in anybody who wants to weigh in can put in their guess.
So I have 90, 29, 70.
That's a bingo. There's 70 Aboriginal languages or Indigenous languages spoken in Canada. But I did mention, right, that there are 12 language families, and Dakelh is one of them. And so within those 70 languages, there's additional dialects that are added. And there's serious threats to the language. So something to think about is there's a loss of aging fluent speakers. As you saw, Edie and Josie's in her 90s. Edie's in her, I think she must be around 70 years old, as is the same. I think our other fluent speakers around 80. And so that's really what is important to kind of keep in mind as the time is now to try and capture as much as you can about those languages with those people. And one last thing before I go, it says 93 plus dialects in BC. So in British Columbia, there's 34 languages, Indigenous languages with over 93 dialects. So yeah, any support is appreciated. And I wanted to share, because it's a cats event, I've got a new kitten. So if you can throw my camera back on, you can say hi to my new kitty, Biggie.
I think you can turn your webcam on. Oh, perfect. There you go.
He was a rescue.
We have to have our kitten
money. Yeah.
So cute. So cute. So just to go back on the trivia question, we are saying 70 is a good number. And the winner for that is Chelsea Powers. Chelsea is the winner. So Chelsea, if you can put your contact information in the chat, in the questions box, and we will get that information to Alistair, because they are donating a kindness kit, which is wonderful.
Thank you. And yeah, it's not exactly as shown, but it is a cornucopia of critter care, compassion, goodness, including some community cat stuff. So we'll happily get that out to you in the next couple of weeks. So thank you, Chelsea. And something else I want is just kind of interesting before I wrap a couple other things up is BC is full of mountains, rivers, lakes. Like there's a lot of it's a very broken landscape, and it's reflected in the ecosystems that we have. It's also reflected in the languages, and I always find it fascinating how language and place are so tightly related. So BC has around half of the native language, the Indigenous languages in Canada also has around half the ecosystem type. So it's they're kind of all tied together, but that's just a bit of a nerdy trivia for you. So yeah, some of the key learnings from the collaboration, and Jennifer, feel free to jump in and elaborate on any of these. But yeah, if start from mutual respect, that's the key ingredient for success. And for us, working with a group and a person like Jennifer, who has deep roots in the community, she's from another, comes from another place, as she sort of described it, but she's well, her organization and she are well rooted, and so are the contacts like Josie and Edie, and that's a really important part of the process. And if we can use respected elders and fluent speakers, we're going to have high quality results. And it's also going to result in pride of use, because we know we're using we're carrying forward the words of respected people. If we can do it using existing materials, it's going to be faster, it's going to be cheaper. In the case of Happy Dog, Happy Cat, the artwork's already paid for, the basic print files are all there. And so that's going to help things move along more quickly. So to the extent that you can adapt, in this case, we said we didn't know, and we appreciate them sharing with us that the dialect, that our original presentation was not not useful in the way it could have been, and so that's why we adapted. But we were able to get there in more quickly as we went. And if each group focuses on what they can do better, then obviously you're going to have more leverage. We pooled our financial resources, and we really thank the school district 57 folks for contributing. Originally, we said we would offer the source materials, the graphic design, and also an allowance for printing. But because Jennifer and her crew were able to come up with additional funds, as any of you have printed materials, if you can add a few more dollars, you get way more copies of whatever you're trying to print. And yeah, so being involved with the school organization in particular, they are tapped right into all the students, all their families by proxy there. So that's a very very valuable thing to a group like Lakes Animal Friendship Society, who's trying to get that message of care and compassion out there. So we're meeting two objectives in the same project, and we're getting a lot of leverage by working together, and we're able to create a positive impact over a much larger number of students and families. So that was a great thing. Anything to add to that list, Jennifer?
Yeah, since receiving the materials, there's a lot of interest in using them and with small groups for the most part, getting kids interested in literacy and languages. The other part is that some of the books that we have, because we ordered so many, we are super thrilled to be able to give them as gifts to guest speakers. And a lot of times if you have big events, you've got an elder opening the event. If it's from that territory, you're able to provide them with a gift that contains the language, because as mentioned, a lot of our elders and adults and youth don't know it at all and start to eat it up once they have it. So not just the language, but the content that is presented. So in this case, caring for an animal, the kitten that I showed earlier is my son's cat. He got it from a friend who, of course, needed to, had too many kittens and needed to find homes for this little guy. But it's a resource that he's able to kind of get, how to care for his pet and to take him to the vet. And so we have those conversations, but also he gets exposed to the language too. So yeah, it's exciting ways to use the resource that are beyond just using them in the school, but gifting it to people at conferences and for coming in and opening events. It's really appreciated by the people who receive them.
No, that's great, Jennifer. And yes, like electronic stuff is great, but there's just something that is unsubstitutable about having a hard copy, and they live on. They get used in the classroom, libraries, or at home, or read to friends. So it's, even though it seems kind of antiquated, it's still a really effective tool. And of course, my wife Valerie was a kindergarten teacher, so I wanted to say, but we can do the electronics for like a penny a piece. But no, she's totally right. Oh, she's not here to benefit from the fact that I admitted that I was wrong for so many years. But yeah, so yeah, no, it's very good to get those out there. And something I just wanted to mention about this version of the materials is, you saw on the sample page, there was emphasized words in case there was that we had vet, nice simple word bolded, and then in the Dakelh version it was person who cares for the lives of animals. But yeah, in the original carrier version we did a Dakelh version in Burns Lake, it was, we had the translation, but we didn't have a lot of opportunity to go back and forth and say, what do we need to emphasize, and how do we, which words do we highlight, that sort of thing. So it was more effective. And if any of you have seen this particular book before, there's a centerpiece at the flip point of the book, which is just a picture of the family by a lake. And even though in our version, original version, there was no words on that page, it was obviously important to Josie and Edie to add text to that page, and so we included that in the final version. So this is the, yeah, so it's kind of interesting how things evolve. And yeah, these are on your slides, so I won't go over them in detail, but there's just some more comments about extending your reach with materials. So this is stuff you can take and use in your organizations, and feel free to contact us. I would not present us as experts on publishing, although we have done an extensive amount of self-publishing now. So we have a few things. If we can help you avoid mistakes, that would be our goal. So if anybody wants to reach out to us about materials, please feel free to do so. Couple fun things for you, and community cat related once again. If those of you who tuned into our presentation, I believe it was 2 years ago, Stacy, at that point we had a project in development called How I Love and Care for My Happy Community Cat, which is sort of a spin on the book that Jennifer was working with us on. But when we completed this version, it is now called At Home Outside, and the book is done, it's out there, and some of you may even have copies of it. But if you don't, you'll have the opportunity, if any, I've shared this with Stacy already, any attendees, you're welcome to contact us directly on our contact form, or email me later, and we will get you a copy of our community cat book. So that offer is there. And back to sort of Jennifer alluded to it a bit. So we have the hard copy versions, electronic versions of the Dakelh version that she helped translate. But just also want to say that when it comes to diversity, we can also look at diversity of materials for different types of learners, and this is something to be apparent to just about anybody. But in our latest versions of materials, we created actually a songbook. This is all English, unfortunately, at this point, but it is there. Critter Care sing-along songs, and there's professionally recorded versions of these songs. And as well, we've created karaoke versions, which are on YouTube. So there's, so yeah, there's just another kids love songs, and if you can listen to Love the Cats and not be singing it an hour later, then I'll give you $5. So there you go. And then this is a last fun thing. So yeah, we had Dr. Jeff visit the community before he was all famous, but this is the group of students up at Babine Elementary Secondary School. It's essentially, basically, it's formerly a large school in a mining town, which is, the mine has long closed, but it's basically now a 2-room schoolhouse. And the kids there, they have some great teachers, and they do a number of different programs. And this student-led project was taking recycled materials, mostly jeans. They went kind of door to door and collected, and then they cut them up and made them into patchwork blankets for dogs and cats in need. So and this project was featured in our book Out of the Cold as well. And we sent a copy to the woman on the right-hand side, who most of you will recognize as Jane Goodall, and we got a lovely personal email directly from Jane saying, what a great project, and just so excited for the kids at Bess. And so it's fun. It's always fun to be able to share to our kids in our northern communities, which tend to be small, they're remote, to know that there's an outside world, and what they do has impact in their community, and also it's inspirational to those outside the community, that what they do is positive, and it's a big thing. So yeah, so that's the celebration part of what we do. So we're always excited about that.
I just want to add an idea that I had as you were presenting there with the students and stuff. One other way to get through, because I know having illustrators work on books can be a lot of work. If you have community groups or a class or an art class, I think it'd be great opportunity to do it as a collaborative project with the class, to have the students illustrate the lyrics, the story, and work on the translations with elders and build those relationships. Because I was lucky to be able to do that, but it'd be great for example, a class to be able to work on that as a project, as we're looking at education now as not just the spoon-fed teacher at the front of the class, fill out the worksheet. It's more project-based in a lot of the schools, and participatory. So I just see the opportunities for our youth to participate in this, whole process from translations to illustrations. Thanks.
Yeah, no, well said, Jennifer. And yeah, certainly that's something that we've always we would have dearly loved to do. And we've been able to do that in a minor way, like with the kids engaging with us with their art, like say specific to Nobody's Cats, where we included their art as sort of embellishments. But there's definitely some great opportunities to do more. And of course, you have an art background, so you totally see it. The sad part is not everybody is as enthusiastic as you are, or sees the value in certain things. But we try to remain open to that. We just sometimes great opportunities go unexplored, and I don't know what those of you who are attending, it's as I've explained to other people, it's just like we're in business or whatever. So, sometimes an expert is seen as, you can only be an expert if you're from away. And what I mean by that is we sometimes undervalue what's going on in our own communities, and that's something we're very careful not to do. And even though if we question ourselves sometimes when you get a response from folks who come and say, oh, wow, that's pretty cool, or like Jennifer just said, well, what about getting the art group? Okay, well, they haven't been receptive, but so it wasn't that we had a bad idea. It's just that the time wasn't right yet, and the group will come along. But basically, for those of you who are attending, believe in yourself and trust that you could be doing a good thing even if the local community doesn't fully buy in when you think they should.
Yeah, patience, taking the time. I know it took a lot longer than we had anticipated, but we got to work with elderly people a lot of times, and people's health and wellness. And as people get older, you lose people more often. So the availability of community members isn't always as scheduled and on time as you would like it to be. So that anticipate that there may be delays, and there may be additional supports required to do some parts of the work, like COVID.
Yeah, excellent point. Patience. That's a good catchword too for the project. Absolutely.
Great presentation. Excellent information. Alistair, we have a question here about laughs. What are the 4 programs that you offer again? The person missed it all.
Yeah. No, I kind of laughed at myself because I said 4 and then I lumped 2 together, so it sounded like 3. I'm like counting myself. Student and community education is our number 1. Number 2, and then this is sort of an order of the important. I mean, they're all important, but how we sort of allocate our mental energy. And financial resources to a larger degree. So yeah, community and student education, spay neuter assistance for animals from low-income families. We include community cats in that category. And then also we help low-income families with their pet food needs, and also outdoor shelters, so like dog houses, dog or cat shelters for animals who must be in the outdoors for various reasons. And we're fortunate with respect to the pet food program, we partner with our local food bank. So historically, we were more sort of hands-on with it. And we had a functional program, but it wasn't as efficient as it is now, where basically the food center takes care of the demands themselves. So we support it through connections and funding, and they do what they do best, which is make sure that they know when the supplies are running low, and it's working great now. So we're happy about that.
Yeah, that's the best possible solution. That's I'm president of Positive Pantry over here in Vermont, and we cover Vermont and Massachusetts, and we partnered with the Vermont Food Bank. So we just basically supply the food. It goes into their distribution system and goes out to 120 food shelves across the state. And then Massachusetts does not have a leading organization that's like that. The large food banks don't have the capacity to add pet food in their distribution networks. So we have to do it like volunteer pods. We have like 40 volunteers all around the state, and Humane Society is trying to sort of patchwork the state coverage, which makes it a lot more challenging and a lot less efficient. But it is what it is for us at this point in time. So it's music to my ears to hear what you have going on over there.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So another question, folks are asking, what's the email address to get materials? And so if you can put it in the chat, we'll move it over into the chat for the whole group so they can see it.
For sure. Should be the slide there. The final. Sorry.
There you go. Okay, in here. Okay. I just want to make sure I was giving out the right email address. Okay, great. Super.
Yeah.
We'll put that,
So,
make sure we get that in the chat.
For sure. Yeah. And so people can connect with me via email, or we do have a contact tab on our website.
Excellent. Super. And that would be also if people want the Dr. Jeff books, those are in there on the website too.
No, the short answer is no, not at this point, but the readings of the books are on YouTube.
Okay.
So there's in the readings, there's a fellow Lowry Olafson, who's actually the singer-songwriter we work with on our songs. So he does readings of all 4 of our books on YouTube, and so there's the slides alongside.
Okay.
But yeah, but certainly folks can order a copy of the English language version if they prefer. Sorry, one comment I forgot to make when we were talking about the dual translation. So historically in our community, we only had the English version, which is what we distributed. Now we only distribute the Dakelh version because it is bilingual. So that's another helpful thing. So instead it's kind of giving it's giving all students exposure to the language, which is not a bad thing at all. And it's also given top billing in the translation. So I think that's another little nuance that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, for sure. All the books, the series of books, the work that you have done, and maybe this is a question for Jennifer, who's in the school system working with the books. What's the age range of students that you use these resources with?
Oh, that's an interesting question because it does vary. I think the main target age range is the kind of, I'd say grades 3 to 5. However, the teachers and students of any age can learn through it, right? So we did provide them to our high schools as well because there's different people at different ages, like even grade 11, 12s, they're still reading at a grade 3 level for some of our students. So we try to ensure that it's accessible to everybody and they can do what they want with it. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be about learning to read in the English sense, although for some it might be. It could be used at any level. We're working on a Dakelh curriculum that could be used provincially, and that will be submitted hopefully for next year. So anyone in any community all through BC will be able to offer as a course, and possibly our thoughts were through distance learning, and this would be a vital resource for that, just to kind of get people warmed up to the language. So sentence structure, for example, is quite a bit different in our language. It's similar to French, where the verbs are at the end versus the beginning. So just to demonstrate and illustrate that aspect could be used at any level, even at the university level. So yeah, so basically a good teacher will know how to adapt a resource for their clientele, for the diversity in their class. And as Alistair mentioned about the accessibility, by creating the audio versions, right? Because some people may or may not be able to read, and they'll be able to hear it. And so we'll do some recordings of our elders speaking the language and telling the story in Dakelh as well.
In the
Yeah.
traditional storytelling that many cultures have is story after story after story. What do you find a lot of stories about dogs and cats in there, or is it more just direct translation? I mean, I understand for the project it was direct translation, but just in general, the stories that are being passed down around dogs and cats, what are the themes that you see?
Well, I kind of mentioned earlier how dogs were considered part of the family. They really, the oral history is more what you hear about with the dogs in respect to how dogs traveled with people and what they used, and they would actually be part of the family and packing things, and of course pulling sleds, and the history of people out hunting and fishing with their dogs, right? Incredibly crucial for safety out there in the woods, right? So I don't, when we talk about dogs, like our domesticated cats and dogs are different. So there would be stories, historical stories of, the wild cats that live in the world, and the dog, the wolves and things like that. So there are oral histories of wolves for sure, which would have been their type of dog, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's well said. And just to pick up on your question before, Stacy, like typically from Valerie's perspective, after thousands of student visits, like grade 2 to 4 is kind of the sweet spot for what she's found with the materials, as far as the combination of the level, or the literacy level that we target, as well as the appetite for these materials. But as Jennifer said, yeah, a good teacher will be able to adapt them in different ways for different situations. So it's more of a literacy level as opposed to a grade level, would be a good description.
Yeah. And I know I've mentioned this to you, Alistair. My mother loved Nobody's Cat when she was suffering from severe dementia. And so, it really does span a tremendous age range, and it comes down to comfort, what brings comfort to the person, what makes them feel safe in what they're reading and looking at and enjoying. And, she would work hard and study the words and practice writing the words and those kinds of things. So, there's a use for every age for these publications, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and also further to that, is your community cat folks will fully understand, is that sometimes people don't get the whole community cat thing, or what it means to do a TNR project, and so we get people who are just really happy to share books with it, even though they're giving it to their neighbor for it to read to their kids. Really, they're telling their neighbor, this is what a TNR project is and how it works in a visual simple way. So it's almost like a TNR brochure for the uninformed. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you, Jennifer and Alistair. Thank you. This was fantastic, wonderful, and I appreciate your generosity in offering resources out to our audience here, as well as the cat trivia question. So that was great, and the gift there, the kindness kit. Thank you so much. Tremendous work. I love what you all are doing, and I can't wait to see what you do over the next year or so, what your new projects are. So thank you again.
Thank you for having, I'll give Jennifer the last word, but I will say thank you, Stacy, and I also want to thank you, Jennifer. And it was a really, really cool project. I look forward to hopefully doing our family next, and with you guys. And also, yeah, I'm just, after reading Jennifer's CV there, I'm like, I want to see her material. So I can't wait to see what Jennifer creates over her career. So yeah, it was a pleasure.
Okay, thanks very much for having us here. It's been good. I hope everybody who's attending has something to take home. And if you have any questions or any ideas or looking for advice, because I know in your home communities it might be daunting to think of what the first step is, feel free to call me or email me. My email's there. You can Google me. I'm sure you'll find my number. Yeah, I think those partnerships and like we have here can be tremendously beneficial for communities and for the future of our pets and our children. So thank you so much, and great to meet you, Stacey, and nice to meet you in digital format, Alistair, other than emails. So just to note, all of this was done via email, so we never had a phone call, I don't think. It's all been back and forth in email, so technology's been interesting. I'm surprised we never Zoomed the whole time. I think we're all Zoomed out.
I know. It's been
amazing. A Zoom-free COVID project. Hallelujah.
Well, thank you so very, very much. And it's about 4:15. We have a break on the schedule right now. So let me take a poll of the group out.